Hello, everyone. I'm Karina Reynolds, the Executive Director of the Center for Book Arts, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight for our first live digital event. If this is your first time participating in one of the Center's programs, congratulations. You found an amazing community of artists and designers actively exploring the book as an art object. Since 1974, we have been providing access to equipment, techniques, and the critical conversations needed to produce book art. Today, more than ever, there is something empowering about making and having the ability to share your ideas with others. The book, as an art form, is especially suited for this, and typography is a big part of that. The visual stylization of written language has been practiced by cultures for much longer than the computerized fonts we are used to. Tonight's event is all about widening perspective and learning through the intersection of Arabic and English. We are live streaming this program in order to transcend the physical limitations of location. Additionally, this seminar, like the two related programs before it, will be archived on our website so that it can be accessed by more people in various geographic locations over time. We can learn so much from language, and tonight we are focusing on the relationship between heritage and technology within Arabic typography. I want to take a moment to thank our members and supporters. This series was supported in part by the New York State Council of the Arts with the support of Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature, and by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council. And now, to introduce the curator and host of tonight's program, Dr. Nadine Chahine. Dr. Chahine is an award-winning Lebanese type designer and principal at Arabic Type Limited. She has a master's in typeface design from the University of Reading, UK, and a PhD from Leiden University in the Netherlands. She has received many honors, including 2 awards of excellence in type design from the Type Directors Club in New York. The list of typefaces she has designed is impressive. Frutiger Arabic, New Helvetica Arabic, Universe Next Arabic, Palatino Arabic, Kufia. It's amazing. So everyone, let's welcome Dr. Nadine Chahine.
So thank you, Corina, and hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. The speakers, I can see your videos. Can you guys hear me well? Just to make sure. Excellent. Okay, good. So thank you for Corina for the introduction. Thank you for the Center for Book Arts for making this series happen. We've had 2 events in New York already, but then we got the shutdown and everyone went home. So today we are coming to you from all over the world, literally. I'm calling in from my own living room in London, and the speakers are all calling in from various locations as well. We'll get to that in a second. The first panel that we had was focused on the theme of modernity in Arabic type design. The second panel we had focused on contemporary Arabic graphic design. Today we're going to be looking at heritage and technology, because we cannot talk about typography, letterforms of the Arabic script without understanding the relationship with technology as well, and also understanding the heritage that we've been lucky to have. And it's a big influence as a source of inspiration for us, with all the challenges it presents, but also with all the beauty as well. So there is always that variety of resources to look at and then challenges to overcome. We have amazing speakers today. I've been talking about this panel throughout the other series as well, the other panels as well, because I was really looking forward to this. It really is a pity that we can't meet in real life, but obviously safety comes first, health as well. And so I'm really glad that we can do this from home and everyone is safe. Please stay home. And so we will have 3 speakers today. We will start with, and I will introduce each separately, but basically we will have, in the beginning, we'll have Mamoun Sakkal, Dr. Mamoun Sakkal, and then we will have Stephen Coles, and then we will have, Eric, I always mess up your name, sorry. He has the longest name possible that I know of. Wait, okay, Rainer Erich Scheichelbauer. I always say Erich because it's too long to remember the German one. I should have practiced this. Anyways, I knew something will go wrong today, but anyways, I'm so sorry. Entschuldigung. Anyways, but at least I can speak German. But okay, good. So, so for the first speaker today, I will read his bio. We've talked about the speaker through most of the presentations that we've had before because of his respected stature within the Arabic type design community, his contribution to everyone, the many awards that he has won, and the major contributions and just being who he is. So we've all been looking forward to have him speak. That's like my little personal intro, but then I'm also going to read to you his bio because you will see why it's been so amazing to have him with us. So Dr. Mamoun Sakkal is the founder and principal of Sakkal Design in Bothell in Washington, providing graphic design and communication solutions to major national and international corporations. His firm has focused on Arabic calligraphy and typography since the 1990s and received several awards for calligraphy, graphics, and type design, including awards of excellence from ADC, TDC, Grand Shan, and Erkika in Istanbul. His work is widely published in typography and calligraphy books and annuals, including Communication Arts, Huruf Arabiya, Letter Arts Review, Logo Lounge, and Yearbook of Type, among others. Dr. Sakkal was commissioned to design the corporate Arabic typefaces for Burj Khalifa and Armani Hotel in Dubai. He is the Arabic language consultant for Microsoft, and several of his Arabic fonts are now widely used as Windows system fonts. He holds a PhD from the University of Washington in Seattle, and his clients include Adobe, Amazon, Apple, Google, Linotype, Microsoft, Monotype, and National Geographic. So that's the official bio. But I should also say, if you don't know the typeface Shilia, you should check it out. If you haven't seen Calibri Arabic, rush to Word and go check it out. But after we finish the panel, these two typefaces are some of my favorites from what he's designed. But he's going to be sharing with us now a little bit more. So please help me welcome Dr. Mamoun Sakkal. Thank you. So Mamoun, we wait for you. You're still on mute.
Okay,
Excellent.
I'm now.
Okay.
Thank you, Nadine, and thank you, the Center for Book Arts, for organizing this event. I think this is the largest activity related to Arabic typography that has been held so far in the United States. The presentations that have been done a couple of weeks ago, as well as this one, gathered some of the most talented and experienced speakers that deal with Arabic typography. So thank you for giving this attention to a subject that is not often discussed widely. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start this slideshow. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, everything looks okay. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. My topic today is about my own journey into Arabic script. Arabic, of course, is well known for its calligraphic heritage, and many people are familiar with how traditional manuscripts look similar to this one written in Naskh, probably a couple hundred years ago. However, my own journey started quite far away from Arabic calligraphy. I started as a painter and learned my craft in the European tradition. I learned about painting, illustration, but I had a special interest in graphic arts, which at that time was basically applying my illustrative and painting skills to everyday objects or printed material. You can see here a couple cover designs on the left and a poster on the right. These were designed between 1973 and 1975. Clearly, I'm relying on my illustrative abilities, but in these projects, as well as in many others, text had to be incorporated. And when I was faced with the challenge of adding text to these works, I had little to no experience besides my familiarity with the script and my exposure to writing and calligraphy in general, but not in practice. So in order to face this challenge, I started by writing in Kufic style, which is a more or less geometric style that I can draw rather than write with a pen. The Kufi is quite appropriate for many of these projects because of its simple and contemporary feeling. But I also had to work with more cursive scripts when the subject required different expression. And in these cases, as you can see on the poster on the right, I had to draw the text again as typographic composition rather than hand-drawn calligraphy. In later years, calligraphy and type became an essential part of my work, and quite often I continued to combine my interest in text with that of illustration. This is an illustration I prepared for a cover showing the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish and excerpts from his poem that ends with the two words, words and light. And these are the words that you see highlighted in the center of the work. I did, in fact, study architecture as a profession, and this led me to certain experiences that turned to be useful to me later on in life. One of these, of course, is the ability to draft things with precision. That was quite helpful for me when drawing outlines of letters. But another aspect was that architecture, unlike art, painting, and so on, is an art that is directly related to people. It's always exposed to direct use of average people. So it's not a museum art. It's not something where my work would be isolated. So in 1975, when there was a national competition to design a monument for the unknown soldier, I searched my own local heritage about what would be an appropriate visual expression that would appeal to most of the people in my city or wherever this monument was going to be constructed or erected. And I found that calligraphy was by far the most important visual art, both in terms of the historical depth of my culture, as well as current interests. So I chose to design the monument from words, a verse or a quotation, where I took the words into the third dimension and composed them around in four facades of a little building where one would enter and see exhibits about the subject inside the calligraphy. This here was based on one of my favorite styles of calligraphy. It's called sometimes the Eastern Kufi or the New Kufi. The design follows the rules of the traditional style, except for simplification and for playing with the size of the different dots in order to make up the complete composition. Now, I have designed some buildings where calligraphy was used. For example, this project in Mount Lake Terrace here near where I live now in Washington. We have used calligraphy on the entrance canopy, which appears here in turquoise and blue, as well as in a band that wraps around the building. This band was not actually executed, and hopefully in time funds will be raised to add it as well. Now, one of the reasons I didn't start by studying calligraphy was the fact that in Aleppo, where I come from, which is mostly destroyed now, unfortunately, local traditions in general were not very attractive to me. I've seen a lot of backward thinking. I've seen poor conditions, and I aspired to something better and more modern. And unfortunately, within this environment, many of the local arts were also tainted by this view of not being good enough or suitable enough for our time. When I started to look at calligraphy, I realized that indeed we have a very rich visual heritage that is worth working with and worth developing and recreating for our own time. And from that point on, I became more and more interested in this heritage and regained control over what I consider appropriate and good. And I found myself finally devoting all my time to designing typefaces. And if you asked me 40 years ago, when I was painting in the European style, I would never have guessed that I would become a type designer. But this is something I love, and I'm going to share with you some of the work I've done in this regard. On the screen here, you can see two examples of projects I've done for the local community here in Seattle. Every year, we prepare a calendar for Ramadan, and every year they ask me to prepare a piece of artwork that would decorate such calendar. And here you can see two examples. On the left is a typical classic sulus calligraphic composition. On the right is a composition of typographic letters that come from my font Sakkal Majalla. Two additional examples for the same calendar. Again, these show the variety of different styles that I've worked with, and as you can imagine, every year or two, we try to change the style, so people would be exposed to different pieces of artwork, and they would know that time is passing by. This style I've used later on in an animation that was used in a presentation where cursive calligraphy morphs into square Kufic, and square Kufic is one of my favorite calligraphic styles. I've done my PhD dissertation on this style of calligraphy, and in practice, it's used a lot in architecture, but in my own work, I've taken the work again from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions and tried to create calligraphic compositions on all 3 dimensions of space. This concept can be shown clearly here, starting from the right. You can see the typical writing. This is the Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. This is how it's written for many, many centuries. This is a style that started about 700 years ago and is getting a lot more popular now after a period of decline. So on the right, you can see the phrase written in 2 lines. I broke these 2 lines into segments, and then I looked for certain shared qualities between the different pieces of the text, and finally combined it into a 3-dimensional composition, as you can see on the right. This is a work that I've done almost 20 years ago now, actually almost 25 years ago. And it seems to appeal to a lot of people because of its complex quality, and yet at the same time having a straightforward and appealing message visually. So in most of my work, I have searched for the graphic and visual appeal of the text, and tried to make an expression through the composition and the typographic and calligraphic elements, even if somebody doesn't or cannot read the text itself. However, in this process, I often had to go back and work with more traditional mediums based on the requirements of certain projects, and that in turn prompted me to study the traditions that I've ignored early on in my life. So in my case, I started away from the tradition, and then as time passed, I found that indeed there are a lot of valuable lessons and expressions that can be incorporated into my own work without sacrificing my taste or level of quality. I found that even when the requirements do not call for a very drastic or very modern expression, I can still produce works that appeal to my own sensibilities and to those of many contemporary users, whether they have experience with traditional calligraphy or not. The work I've done in type design covered many different styles. And in this presentation, I'm going to review with you the two main categories of Arabic calligraphy. The first is the Kufi, which is the more geometric and more simple in terms of compositions. The second is the second group is the cursive styles, which come in a number of varieties, and these can serve many purposes. And in this presentation, I will share with you one from the first group, one style from the first group, and another style from the second group. This first one here is my font Shelia, and I want to start by thanking Dr. Nadine Chahine, because she was instrumental in getting this project licensed by Linotype in 2010 or so. And she was also instrumental in recent updates that we have done to expand the family to include a condensed and compressed versions. Thank you, Nadine, for all your work while you were with Linotype and Monotype. I think you were an excellent supporter of Arabic typography, not only with your own designs, but also with helping other designers as well.
Thank you.
You are in the original release of Shelia in 2011, we had 8 weights, which was a very good collection of variants at the time. And as you can see here, the Arabic is paired with universe. In this design, the Arabic was started long before it was paired with the Latin. And we decided at the time that we are not going to modify the Arabic very much from its original design to completely match the Latin, but to have more or less a general compatibility, both in terms of shape, feeling, color, and so on. 10 years ago, we were hoping to release the full family, but the production limitations at the time allowed us to release only these 8 weights. Finally, we did get back to the project a couple of years ago and prepared the additional width. You can see here the condensed family with 8 weights as well. And here you can see the compressed family with 5 weights. In all these styles, again, I relied on Frödiger's universe, general construction and proportions, and found it to be very compatible with Shelia design. Here is the full family now. with the normal weights on top and the condensed and compressed below. An example of using the compressed version on the second line here. As you can see, the variety of weights gives the designer a good range of expressions so that you can have the appropriate strength or appropriate hierarchy as needed for the project. This font includes many variations to help the designer reach a more sophisticated and more varied expression. On the left, for example, you can see stylistic swashes. At the time, this type of treatment was almost limited to traditional calligraphy, and in Scheichelbauer, I wanted to bring in some of those traditional treatments in a contemporary and modern font. On the right side, you can see the abstract quality that these shapes produce when one makes extreme weights, both light and bold. The features of the font can be accessed through 20 different stylistic sets shown here, and each one of these, of course, can provide certain visual expression. I haven't seen many of these used over the years. I think the richness of the font is not always accessed by designers. We have prepared an extensive brochure to show the stylistic sets as well as the other features of the font, and I hope users will be able to review that brochure. The font is actually, this expansion is actually launched today. It is released today, so this is, you are the first people to see those new additions to the font, and it will be available on most retail online stores. This is a typical use for condensed and compressed weights, where a lot of information is squeezed into a limited horizontal space. The font includes a number of phrase ligatures, and it also has special glyphs to produce ornaments, almost limitless variations based on 12 initial glyphs. One of the most famous uses or applications of Scheichelbauer is a custom version we prepared for Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. Now, on the other end, I show here a Naskh font. This is Arabic typesetting designed for Microsoft. Again, this type of writing or of text was quite outside the range of my interest when I started. But in time, I found that it is indeed very challenging and quite rich to work with. And in here you can see one of the first fonts I did, where I tried to emulate Naskh calligraphy. Most of you know that Arabic changes, Arabic letters change form according to the context, but in better Naskh fonts, we go beyond the basic forms into contextual alternates where the same letter would have to change the form based on what comes after it or what comes before it. In Arabic typesetting, we try to emulate several of these calligraphic features, and I think it did appeal to a lot of people. Here I show the treatment of the variable height for the teeth. These are repeated quite often in Arabic calligraphy. So traditional calligraphy produced a system to vary the heights to help in reading and distinguishing the letters. We also emulated the subtle slanting baseline that comes from the necessity to connect to some letters from above rather from the right. But in looking more closely at Naskh calligraphy, one could find subtle variations that make the design, that give the design different flavors. I show here 5 Naskh-based fonts that I've designed, starting with Arabic typesetting. At the top, Microsoft Uyghur, which is specifically designed according to the preferences of the Chinese Muslims in Uyghur Uyghur culture, and then Calibri in the middle with more open forms and softer terminals and curves, and then Sakkal Majalla in a variation where the baseline is made completely horizontal, but nonetheless many calligraphic features are still incorporated into design. And finally, at the bottom, Sakkal Saad is a less formal design with very compact vertical metrics. The last font I did is Sakkal Kitab, shown here, tackling 2 important challenges in Naskh typography. The first one is creating different weights in a calligraphic tradition where a certain style always had to have only one weight. So the challenge here is to have both lighter and bolder weights, but still make the font look quite traditional and quite natural looking. The second challenge we tried to face here is the extension between the connected letters in a cursive manner. And you can see here different treatments, both for swash letters, as well as the cursive connections between. In this font, we provided 5 different lengths that can be selected by the user. With the recent introduction of variable type, this type of design can also provide an interesting potential to have line justification based on specific instances that can be produced as needed. Here is a composed page. Everything on this page is part of the font itself, and again the goal here is to show that traditional typography, traditional styles can indeed appeal to a contemporary user and can provide high quality typography within the traditional rules. The first major company to license this font was Amazon for its Kindle, and as you can see here, there are different interfaces or color schemes that can be applied, and you are welcome to test it and review it. There are many free books on Kindle available now in Arabic. Now I'd like to ask you to switch a little bit your vision and imagine women wearing black dresses and walking in the wind. These are all made up of typographic parts, but my contention here is you can also see a completely graphic image. You can see a totally different image in the typography. Now, we all know that text, typography, calligraphy is indeed an image on its own and has many qualities that will project an artistic or an emotional expression by its own visual quality. But I want to finish this presentation by showing a number of logos and monograms that I've designed over time, all incorporating text and all representing at the same time another object, sometimes obvious, but in most cases completely combining the text or modifying the text to reflect an image that can be viewed on its own. With this type of work, I go back to my original interest in art and illustration, but completely in a new medium that appeals to me personally, but also reflects the long tradition of my people. Thank you, and I hope I didn't go over time.
Thank you so much, Mamoun. This was brilliant. Thank you so much. We will have time for questions later. But yeah, thank you again. And the surprise of Sheila, that was the best gift ever. I'm really, really happy to see that. But we can talk about that in the Q&A. But yeah, amazing. I went and I checked. It is. I shared the link on Twitter already. I shared the linotype.com link, and so people can go see it. The family is there. That's really, really good. Yeah, thank you so much. So
I just want to make one comment. This shows how much work goes into producing a font. It has been many years of work, and finally it came to fruition. So I want to thank you one more time as well.
Yeah. Mabruk, Mabruk. You're welcome. Okay, great. Okay, so let's get to the next panelists. I will first read his official bio, and then I'm gonna explain a little bit what we're doing here. The next speaker is Stephen Coles. He is the editorial director and associate curator at the Letterform Archive in San Francisco. He also publishes Fonts and News and Typographica, and wrote the book The Anatomy of Type. So in January, I was in San Francisco at the invitation of the Letterform Archive to give a talk on Arabic type design, and I spoke a little bit about politics as well as usual, which I'm not doing here today. But anyways, so and I went to see not today. I went to see the archives, and we sat in this amazing space with so many books. And for the first time, I think if the slides are in the same order that I saw them, the first slide is a Maghribi calligraphy on.
It's the first Arabic slide, yeah.
The Arabic slide, yes.
Yeah.
It's on vellum. It's Maghribi style. I had never touched in my entire life a piece of actual vellum with Arabic calligraphy on it. This had never happened in my life before. I couldn't believe they let me touch it, but it seems they let everyone as well, not just me. And I think this is the really special thing about the Letterform Archive, that they collect and curate these amazing collections that anyone who wishes can go and see. This is so different from how we interact with art, which is either behind a glass, display, or in a library where you're not even allowed to breathe next to it, or, like to have it as part of life, as something we can hold and we can experience as an object, gives us such a different view of how alive it is. It's suddenly a little bit more concrete. And so we were just sitting there, and then I was like, Stephen, you have to come to New York and let's show this to people. So the plan was that Stephen would come with some parts of the collection, and we would have these sessions and people would see. Unfortunately, that could not happen, but we can still take this journey today and look at the, some amazing examples from the archives, not just Arabic, a little bit of other scripts as well. And Stephen is the perfect person to take us through this. And if you guys don't know, one of the highlights of the year in terms of recognition of excellence in type design is Typographica's curation of best of the year, which Stephen does on a yearly basis. So he also is contributing enormously to our community, to whether through books, through curation, through articles, and through the work that he does today. So thank you so much, Stephen, for agreeing to take us on this journey, and please go ahead.
Wow, thank you so much for that intro. You've actually done a lot of my talk for me, so I appreciate that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I heard silence, so I wasn't sure. So thank you very much, Nadine, for the invitation, and to Jenna and the Center for Book Arts for facilitating this, moving us online so swiftly. It would have been great to show you a lot of these things in person, but it's also great that we can reach a wider audience this way. So I'm excited about that. Before I begin, a big fat disclaimer. I know some things about type and typography, but I'm not an expert in global scripts. I'm not even a type designer or a calligrapher, which is why it's humbling to follow Mamoun. So I'm merely a messenger, and a very imperfect messenger at that. But that's really how I see my role at Letterform Archive. I do my best to share and interpret the history of written communication. And I do that with a lot of help from a brilliant staff there, and also a community of enthusiasts and experts who have actually helped a lot with some of the things I'll show you today. Just for those of you who do not know, Letterform Archive is a museum. We're also a library. We're also a school, and we're also a publisher. And we have a collection that's pretty incredible in its breadth. It's about 60,000 objects now, and it includes all areas of history, of style, design, material, but it's targeted only on letterforms. So that gives us a kind of a curatorial vision that's different from most other institutions. We're focused on objects that have interesting or groundbreaking letterforms. And that allows us to do a lot of different things, including create books, do workshops, teach a full year course in type design, and do it in a way that I think a lot of other places can't do. And so now at this point, after being open for, we're just passing our 5th anniversary now. We were opened in 2015. We've seen over 10,000 visitors to the archive. And they've come for tours and for classes and workshops. But what we do in these tours is try to give a sense of the history of type and lettering and calligraphy. This is a sample of one part of a introductory table, what it might look like when you come to visit. There are artist books. There's a wood type catalog and a couple examples of wood type. There's the Speedball textbook archive from Rossef George in his prototype pens. There's type specimens. There's posters from the psychedelic era here in San Francisco. And then there are manuscripts and a leaf of the Gutenberg Bible. And so that's an intro tour, but then we also have the opportunity to really narrow down into one aspect of the collection. And this is an example of that for a class that we've been teaching now for 2 years for the California College of Arts. It's an MFA course on the history of typography. And each week we teach a different era of design and typography by showing the actual objects. So the students are able to see the physical material rather than just looking at things on screens. And that really, as the tablet, and there's the leaf of the Gutenberg Bible in the background. Actually, no, that's a manuscript that's about the same period as the Gutenberg Bible. We take preservation seriously. Everyone washes their hands when they come in. That'll be even easier to remind people to do after what we're going through now. And we take great care of the objects, but we really want people to be able to hold them. I'm going to take you on a quick tour on just some examples of what we have in the collection, and then at the end we'll look in detail at the Arabic material with Mamoun and Nadine. This is a facsimile of the papyrus of Ani, which is called the Book of the Dead. This is a really beautiful 1894 facsimile of this papyrus, and one of the best examples of hieroglyphs. And we also have this dictionary that comes with it to explain some of the text. This is an Ethiopic manuscript in Ge'ez or Ge'ez. Somebody can help me pronounce that correctly. Is the script that it's written with. They're often found in these carrying cases, which are really beautiful. This is another one with a really nice binding and illustrations on the interior. And here's the script. So this is Ethiopic or Ge'ez. These are essentially books of hours or other religious texts. And this language was used long time ago, up until about 1000 CE, but it's still spoken today in religious contexts. You can see some illuminations here. And this is on vellum, and you can see a repair to the vellum, which is, I think, also just a beautiful part of the object. This is one of the earliest type specimens ever published. It's 1628 from the Vatican, part of the Propaganda Fide, which was the part of the church that spreads the word of the religion through texts in various languages. And so the Vatican was one of the first places that multiple scripts were cast in type. And so there are a lot of examples of fanciful scripts and scripts that were really only as persisting as specimens until the 18th century. You'll see these in other examples up into that period, like Fournier. And this book is one of many from the Propaganda Fide that we have. Other small pamphlets that we have include scripts as individuals within each pamphlet. Some Greek. And it also has some Gregorian music notation as type. So sometimes type is not a linguistic representation, but here it's representing music. Two different styles of notation for Gregorian chants. Another big part of the collection of the archive is writing books. These are come from a period when after type and printing started to become commercially successful, you had calligraphers starting to find other areas where they would continue to have a profession. So scribes and calligraphers started to create these books, which are essentially portfolio pieces, but often also instructional books. So here from this 18th century German book, you see Hebrew being the different strokes of each character being described. And these instructional books would often be quite fantastical. They would have amazing structures or shaped text, as we often call it. This is one of the most incredible examples in the collection. It's a really large folio-sized book. It's probably about 15 inches wide. And each page is this magnificent and includes quite a few different scripts, Phoenician, Etruscan here. This is showing some Devanagari. You see some Greek, Tibetan, Armenian.
The previous page
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well.
Yes. What's that, Mamoun?
Couple pages earlier showed Arabic as well.
Ah, okay. Yeah, we have one that's coming in later on when we talk about the Arabic, but
no, this specific one, just right here.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, up at the top, left and all around the sides. Yeah.
Style, Moroccan.
Thank you. Yeah, please chime in anytime. Here's a little close up, mostly just to get a look at those initials and how magnificent they are, but there's the Armenian. Here's the Ethiopic script there in more of a calligraphic form, a Turkish. A little closer view.
Sorry, there might be a lag, I think, in our video versus text, but it's okay. Just carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Are you
Right.
seeing some?
No, yeah, no. It's because I saw Hebrew in big, but you were saying Ethiopian, but then the Ethiopian is on the side. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, this one's pretty wild. It has lots of different scripts on each page.
yeah, it's amazing. Thank you.
So I'm going to go fairly quick on these. I apologize, but there's so much of the world to travel in so little time. So we can always go back to something at the end if you'd like. This is one of our many foundry specimens. We have about 1,000 bound specimens and several thousand ephemeral specimens from type foundries. This is the Benjamin Krebs foundry, which is actually a German foundry, but they started a branch in St. Petersburg in 1912 and created this really beautiful specimen. And it did not last long. It only lasted about 2 years before they were dissolved during World War I. But this specimen's quite beautiful. Most of these styles are Cyrillic adaptations of Latin styles from the German arm of the foundry. And so it's interesting to try to see how they're adapting Cyrillic to some of these wild Victorian era typefaces. Some initials. Another big part of the collection is our avant-garde typography. There's a lot of constructivism and other aspects of avant-garde. This is one of our favorites from Solomon Tellengatter, which is, it's about a 20-page book, and it's just filled with lots of illustration type. So all of this is metal type letterpress. And then another important aspect of the archives collection is not just really well-known works, really beautifully created works, but also just everyday design from each period that we can possibly collect. So here's Russia in the 1920s, a magazine for women, and these are the advertisements on the back cover. So I feel like ephemera is just as important in telling the history of design as the most extravagant examples are. But speaking of extravagant, this is one of the most beautiful type specimens made in the 20th century. This is part of a pairing. There's a Hebrew and an Arabic, and we'll look at the Arabic at the end. But this is the Hebrew specimen from Berthold. This is just less than a decade before Jews began to be ostracized in Germany. But at this period, there was a huge Jewish population in Berlin, especially, and they were serving it with this collection of type. And the cool thing about these specimens, both this Hebrew one and the Arabic, is that they work in both directions. So you can open it from the left to right for the Latin portion, and then right to left. There's the back cover is actually the front cover for Hebrew. There's the title page on the Latin side. Some pretty awesome initials. And at this time, of course, Orientalism and Egyptian motifs are really popular at the time. So a lot of what you're seeing here also is just what was in vogue in that period. Another part of the archive that's important to us is process work. Rob, our founder and curator, has been giving a talk, which you can see online now, about the importance of collecting and sharing process work, because it helps us understand how graphic design comes to be. So process work is sketches, it's original gouache paintings, it's even mechanicals and paste ups, and that all helps us to understand graphic design and typography. This one is a gouache maquette by Ben Shahn, one of my favorite lettering artists and illustrators, for this book for Jewish Passover. And this is his own copy of the book as well. So what we get to see here is an artist proof showing corrections to the layout. Here he's moving the catchwords to the end of the line. These are Sean's woodcut letters and then also metal type. And also his illustrations. I'm moving into the Indic period of the talk, and I was doing some research for this earlier this week, and I asked on Twitter if anybody has attempted to map the world of scripts. I mean, of course, writing systems can't be placed within borders. They cross borders, they live within different countries. There are multiple scripts within countries, but I thought it would be really interesting if someone could help, especially us here in the Western world, understand where different scripts are commonly used. And this great map by Cécile Marin of Le Monde Diplomatique does a really good job of that. There's a lot there in North America that we could add to it, but it's really interesting what she's done here in the East to explain script usage. And the reason I bring this up now is because we're going to talk about Indic scripts, and it's important to know that in India, there are at least 12 scripts that are in common use. So even though there are 2 official systems at the federal level, there are many more scripts used throughout the country. So it's pretty incredible and can get pretty complex. And one expert in this area is Erich Joshi, and one piece we have in the collection is a diary that that he compiled. It was actually just an address, a phone number, and an address diary that you know, has blanks on each side. But then throughout are peppered these examples of calligraphy from around India. And one of Joshi's projects has been to create a common script that all Indians can use. And it's one of these many examples throughout history of alphabet reform or script invention. So in this chart here, and I'll zoom in, you can see his script, which is called Devanagari, and how it relates to all of the other scripts that are commonly used in India. One of the many things I wanted to show you today that we won't have time for is some of our type specimens from India from the early 1900s. So I will hopefully put those online in a blog post later. Make sure you go to Letterform Archive's news page and follow us there so you can see some more of the stuff that you're not able to see today. This is now moving into Japan. This is one of our favorite collections at the archive. This is the Complete Commercial Artist. It was about 20 volumes of collecting graphic design in Japan in the late 20s. And I'm only going to show you a couple of images of the many that I could show you. And we have a blog post up about this written by Florence Fu, who also spoke about this collection at ATypI last year. And it's just an incredible collection of lettering, of typography, of all the different ways that people were experimenting with Japanese scripts at that time, whether it's through geometry or its relationship to the West. And also just examples of sign making and illustration. Also from Japan, from the 70s, is this really fascinating brochure from the Matoya company. They made a machine called the Type Press. It's kind of like a cross between a typewriter, a linotype machine, and metal foundry type. It's pretty unusual. It's a kind of a way of mechanically typesetting with a script that's pretty complex, and you need a big grid of type like this and some way of working with it to make it work quickly. So this is another brochure that comes from that company. You can see the machine there on the desk. And then this is just a great illustration explaining how it fits into the production process. You may, if you follow us on Instagram and follow our stories, you may have seen a little bit of this in our story that Elise Carlton, our social media manager, recently posted. We're going to post a lot more about this. I've learned some more in the process from Toshiyama Gari. He sent a lot of good information about this interesting machine. Another cool piece that we have donated by a Japanese foundry is a glass phototype plate, which, yes, from Morisawa. My assistant Laura here has helped me out with that one. Morisawa gave that to us a couple of years ago, and I'll put that up on our blog post when we show more of the Japanese collection later. And then moving into Korea, we have a couple of these family histories that are, this one's made with metal type, the other is a manuscript. But I don't have nearly as much information as I would like to about these. And I really am seeking as much expertise as I can from both Chinese and Korean designers about these books. But this one we do believe was printed by a Korean printer who would travel to various locations, possibly in China, and record family history. So this is one of many volumes. It's volume 14. And what you're seeing here are burial maps where different members of the family are buried. Another one of our favorite pieces from the Korean collection, this is Hangul. Most of us are more familiar with totally different style of Hangul, but this is cursive. And actually difficult for, as far as I understand, for a lot of Koreans to read these days. But this is a kind of a copy or a manuscript of an existing novel. And apparently this was quite common at the time to copy an existing book to practice your writing. It's beautiful, beautiful cursive. Such a great book. My friend Minju Ham did a little research for us into this one. And she says that the consonants and the vowels are connected, so that, and the characters are also connected for fast writing, and that's one of the reasons why it's more difficult for modern readers to read it. And then people would often copy these because they were borrowing or lending books to each other, and they wanted to each have a copy, and so they would just copy it by hand. These are often translated from Hangul, or from Kanji to Hangul. And then a more recent part of our Korean collection, really excited. I think this is probably the first time this has been announced. This was an exhibit that Chris Hamamoto at CCA recently curated of current artists working in Seoul and around Seoul. And he put together this really great exhibition, and then most of that exhibition is now coming to the archive. So we'll have a really nice collection of contemporary work. We see ourselves as a living archive, and we want to continue to collect contemporary graphic design so that the history is complete. And then the last thing before we get to the Arabic work, this is a Javanese manuscript, and that's all I can tell you, other than it's beautiful. And so again, we're really calling out to those who may have expertise in Javanese to, oh, my video off?
Yeah, that was a technical error. Sorry. So just if you accept the invite, then it should be okay.
Was it working, or are we still going?
Yes, now we see you.
Okay. I hope that wasn't, I hope you didn't miss too much, but there's the Javanese manuscript. The whole book is this amazing, and we'll try to share more of that soon. But if you're in San Francisco, please come and see it in person. So before we get to the Arabic, I just wanted to quickly thank the people who helped me to research this collection and to bring some of it to you. April Harper is our photographer at the archive, and so the reason that those images look as good as they do, about as close as they can to the real thing, is due to her work. Kate, our librarian, and Chris, who is in a publishing program, they are both working on, or helped work on this class for global scripts for that MFA class I mentioned earlier. So they did a lot of work on this as well. And then on the right, you see those who helped out a lot, especially Mamoun helped a lot with the Arabic that you're going to see later. So thanks to all of those for their assistance. So now we're going to look at some of the Arabic material, and I think that Mamoun and Nadine are going to turn on their mics.
Yes. So the good thing, yes, we can comment. The bad news is that we're running a bit over time. So maybe like just a couple of comments here and there, and unfortunately, I mean, I would love to sit here forever, but I don't know about other people. So I mean,
I'll stay here as long as anybody wants me to.
Yes. I mean, I had wanted to talk about this one. This is the one that I was mentioning before, and this style is gorgeous. We do have someone saying forever, like they second me. Good. So this is the style that the particular piece that I was mentioning before, and when you see it in real life, it's just simply gorgeous. The Maghribi style is one of the most charming Arabic calligraphy styles for me, and you can always recognize it by these semicircular forms in the descenders that you see, and a little bit of stacking between the sad and then the sort of right going descender of the ha in the salihin. But anyways, this is just absolutely gorgeous and charming, and one of my favorites of everything we're gonna see.
Thank you. So this is I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce this correctly, so maybe you or Mamoun can.
Yeah.
But it's a common
Yusuf and Zuleika.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it's full of really great miniatures or illustrations, but I only have one of them to show you today. Most of what we'll look at here is just a great calligraphy, and this is one of the more common pages, but there's also a lot of pages like this, which I think are wonderful.
This is a compact Nastaliq style. It's very elegant, and obviously they paid a lot of attention to providing some variety in the composition of the couplets of the poetry. Most likely these would be the start of some chapters or ends of certain sections. It's typical to have the cloud treatment where you have white behind the text and then provide some gold or other decoration in between the lines so that you don't have a lot of empty or white space.
Just a few more pages of that. This one, we actually got a lot of good feedback from Twitter when we were asking about the script that this is written in. Maybe you can talk more about that, Mamoun.
It's a Malay document, and they used the Arabic script to write their language. Apparently, there are some variations in the way the language can be written. This specific one is in the Pidgin script. The expert from the British Library thinks that this is a late 19th century manuscript, based, I think, on the illumination. And that's very similar to the other manuscript that you showed before, where the text was completely different. So I think there is some continuation in the graphic tradition that bridges different subcultures or bridges the language used. I mean, the text used.
Stephen, can we go back just one slide, please? Mamoun, do you notice how big the counter of the wow is? Like the second line, Rasul.
Yeah.
You know?
Second line on right.
On the right page, yeah. Like when you see Rasul, the wow.
It is big, yeah.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, no? Like significantly big across even the previous slides as well. Like the wow counter is out there.
This is exactly their own style.
Yeah. Interesting. Because normally it's much smaller. Yeah, interesting.
It reminds us a little of the Maghribi.
Yeah.
Because of the large curves.
Yeah.
It looks like they didn't quite finish the illumination here. There's a little pencil, or someone has added that later.
On the right?
Yes. Yeah, you can see, can you all see a little pencil there in the bottom of the
to
right
have
hand
an
side.
arabesque fill the empty space. But it's interesting because it shows the structure before all the embellishments come in.
This is one of two commentary manuscripts that we have. And it was something that I've learned that this is much more common than I realized to have a manuscript and then in the margins have multiple scholars comment at various angles. And to me as someone who can't actually read the script, it just creates this beautiful pattern. But maybe you can talk more about this, Mamoun.
I think these are the successive owners of the manuscript. Apparently, they were scholars because they have a scholarly commentary on certain ideas, and they discuss what other books have said about the subject or what they think about it. And when one writes his notes, it's written at an angle to distinguish the entity of that note. And in this book, I don't see a name, but in the next one, you actually have the names of the people who are commenting always indicated, like here on the right bottom corner. At an angle, you see a red name. And on the top left corner, you see two red names. So each person who is writing his comment is indicating who he is, which of course means that the manuscript was a depository of the knowledge of several generations. In Arabic, we have a tradition of abridging long books or explaining short books. So there is a lot of interaction between various authors over the years or over the generations. This book here shows that interaction specifically in one place in one book. I think it is very interesting. It's not very common to see all that material jammed into one book.
Thank you so much. Just a couple more of that. This is Bedoni's Oratio Dominica, which is the Lord's Prayer in 155 languages. It was really a magnificent piece of work when it came out in 1806. And he cut all of this type, presumably. So it's pretty incredible piece of work. This is just the Arabic, and there are many other scripts that are related in the book. Any comments on this?
The Fa and Qaf followed the Maghribi or Western tradition of dots. which is rather curious because the style is not specifically Maghribi, although you can see some large curves on the bottom two lines that reminds us of Maghribi. The quality is not very impressive. This is
I was just thinking.
and I think that explains a lot why many of the efforts that took place in the West, in Europe, to typeset Arabic did not find enough success. There are, of course, other factors, but I think the mediocre quality has always hindered the expansion of these projects, because there is no way to compare this to any current manuscript. It is quite inferior.
Maybe that's what they mean under here by Barbaria Vulgaria.
Yeah, I think we meant.
Well, the view is exchanged actually.
So we mentioned this in one of the previous panels with Bahia. I think we mentioned that some of these typefaces they were cut based on handwriting of people who had been to the Middle East and seen Arabic calligraphy and came back and sketched it. So that's where you see the missing link, where the people, you know, design or cutting the type did not have really good access to or even connection to the people reading or to the people doing the calligraphy and or writing the calligraphy.
They
so
didn't have high quality examples to follow.
Exactly. And this is a problem. And then the closer the link that we see between the calligraphic source and the people who understand the script, whether you want to design any calligraphy or not, and the people making the type, whether it is cutting it in metal type or in today's world digital, then that, you know, weirdness that we see here is no longer there, luckily. But I remember when I went to Reading and one of my teachers was like, did you know Bodoni cut an Arabic typeface? I was like, really? And then I saw this and I was like, oh. Yeah.
So this is just zooming into the Turkish part of this Arabic script. I don't know if there's any.
This is interesting because they use here the Maghribi style. This style would never have been used in Turkey. Apparently, this is the only model they have available. So they did include it under Turkish. This typeface would never have been accepted for an Ottoman document.
This is, by the way, this is an engraved. I didn't mention this before, but the writing books are often engraved. So this isn't an engraving. It's the calligrapher's interpretation. But yeah. And then some numerals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you briefly, for those who are not familiar, often here in the West we call them Arabic numerals, the numerals we use, but maybe you can quickly explain how that's a misnomer.
We call them Indian numerals because we borrowed them from Indian math. And these examples here are quite familiar, except for the number 4, which has strange flourish of the person who wrote it. And then
the 6 as well is funny.
And number 6, which looks more like the Persian or actually Urdu style, but all the other numbers follow what we use in the Middle East as the Indian numerals. The Arabic numerals used in the West are being revived in several countries nowadays. So you can find use of both systems in some countries. Finally, it's interesting to see the 0 with an additional ring around it. Nowadays, it's just a period, but in Iran, I understand that sometimes they use the hollow dot or like a ring to indicate 0. So this here is quite new to me, where you have both the 0 as a dot and as a ring around it, but it's mislabeled here as 10, of course. It's
yeah, that's
not
funny.
correct. I think this must be 0.
Yeah. This is a type specimen from a printer in Beirut. And yeah, you see the printer's name there in the caption, which I will also not read.
Khalil Sarkis. These are typical Arabic typefaces for the early 20th century. The more common is what you see here, the naskh. The previous one is a challenging design, because cutting those cursive letters and connecting them is quite difficult to produce an acceptable nastaliq. I think the difficulty is also reflected in the price of each ounce of type. 10 francs compared to 5 for the naskhi on the next page. But a very, very interesting example is on the left here, the abbreviated letter or the abbreviated style. This is an attempt to simplify Arabic type by using a smaller number of forms for letters. However, they didn't reduce the number of forms. They just, I mean, the number of actual sorts. They still have initial, middle, and final, and isolated, all separate, but they use the same format of the isolated for final and isolated, I mean, initial for medial. So only the connections look funky and not smooth, but the number of sorts is not reduced. So I don't know exactly.
So it's a typesetting problem.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a design problem.
Oh.
Because like you could have simplified where you get 2 shapes per letter rather than the 4, but you design it in a way that they would actually connect well. So this one is just, it's not designed to be able to sustain a 2 shape rather than 4. But which year was this? Do we know?
This one is 1908.
Interesting. So this is basically like, 40 something years before the simplified naskh that Linotype made.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah.
And another printer's specimen, this one from Cairo.
Now we are starting from the left to show the Latin type. And then we go.
See the separations there in the sorts.
Then we go to the right towards the Arabic.
Do we have anyone from Egypt in the audience? Let's see. They're all texting, by the way, while we're speaking. So.
I know. I did not follow the chat while I was talking.
No, it's okay. You can catch up later. They're really cool. We have people from everywhere.
It starts with the text weights and moves to the display weights.
Right. Yes. If I went the right direction. Yeah. So this is the Berthold specimen I mentioned earlier. From it was produced about a year after the Hebrew, but it's the same format as the other that I showed.
There's a small caption here, or footnote that we need to highlight for those who don't read Arabic. This says Sajair or Sagair al-Saha. So the cigarettes of health where these cigarettes, they remove exhaustion and the taste of smoking and etc. etc. So the text is funny.
Commercial text of the time.
Yeah.
I think what's remarkable about this specific specimen is the exact manufacture of the type where no connections show up. I'm not sure what kind of system this is, but the typical slightly shifted swords and some worn out connections between letters are completely absent here. It looks almost like it's made of one piece of metal.
And then this is, I was mentioning earlier, the Gujarati type foundry in Bombay. I didn't show any of their index scripts, but there's also these in the catalog.
It seems the types here are heavily influenced by European rather than local or Middle Eastern traditions.
Yeah, most of the rest of the type in this catalog is, the Latin-based type at least, is from German and American foundries.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's your favorite, Nadine.
Wait. Sorry, I was just checking. Yes, okay. So I'm checking actually your presentation to see how far along we are, because we're actually
this
really
is the last one. This is the finale. I lost her.
Nadine, did you mute yourself, Nadine?
Oh, I have a fascinating Aurora Borealis showing up here. Well, while she's coming back, this is one of those examples from the collection that combines multiple media. So it's both a type specimen and and process material and archival papers. Walter Tracy was the type director at Linotype for many years, and he also consulted with Letraset. So, oh, here's Nadine's back. She's muted though.
Oh, right. Okay, no, do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry. I was just giving a little
my
intro
connection,
while you were gone.
Yeah, my connection dropped, sorry. So basically, yeah, he lives 2 minutes walk from my house. And he was tasked with doing a review of, like this collection, which is exactly what I did when I joined Linotype. Many years later, he had already passed away. And then I was reviewing the Linotype collection. And so there was a lot of similarity in, like the notes that he would give, and that the types of exercise that I had to do in 2005 when I joined. So there was a lot of similarity, and yeah, I mean, we could talk about this forever. But I promised Stephen that I will write an article about this at some point.
Please.
And I will. So then we can talk more about that later.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, then here's just a quick overview of what Lettera or Rubica was producing at the time. So this is rub down lettering. This is a competitor to Letraset. So you see it being applied here. And all of these notes are from Walter Tracy that you see on top, the red and the pencil.
Yeah, so I'll just speak over while you're going through the slides. So one of the most interesting things about this particular example is that we get to see like handwritten notes like these ones, and comparative analysis between Lettera Arabica and Letraset by Walter Tracy, which gives us an insight to his thinking and his logic and what he's looking at. Often when we see the work of previous designers, like he's the designer of Qadi, for example, he's written the book Letters of Credit, he's written the article The Flourishing Reed. So we know their published work, but we don't know their intimate thinking process, and you know, we don't see their handwriting, we don't, you know, so to have access to something like this was really mind-blowing.
Here he's summarizing all of their typefaces and then comparing them later to what Letraset had on offer. This is the, I guess I do have a couple final ones. This is one of our favorite artist book creators, Islam Ali. He lives in Iowa City, originally from Egypt. And this book here is kind of retelling of his experience in Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring. And it's laser cut. And really it's kind of a repeating of the same phrase that says the people want to bring down the regime. And then the people brought down the regime at the time of the revolution. So it's a really good example of telling a story in an atypical way, and also a really beautifully made book. As something he often does is this laser cut kind of bookmaking or typography or calligraphy. And this is another example which the orientation may look familiar to you if you remember the commentary books or the marginalia that we saw before. That's really what he's commenting on in this piece of work. So I can show you the comparison here and can see what he was drawing from. That is it for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Mamoun, also for the comments.
Thank you.
We're going to, so again, if there are any questions, we'll take them at the end. We're really running out of time, but anyways, we still have the last one. Thank you for everyone who's still on the call today. The last presentation will be with Erich Scheichelbauer. Now I have the full family name in front of me. So I will be presenting with him. So I'm going to give you a very, very quick preview of what font technology for Arabic used to look like in the 90s and early 2000s. And then Erich is going to show us some of the most amazing technology for developing Arabic fonts today. So about Erich, he is a trained photographer. He's born in Vienna in Austria, and he holds both a degree in philosophy and Dutch studies. He creates typefaces. He works as a digital punch cutter for other type designers and gives type design workshops on a regular basis. Since he has joined the Glyphs team in 2012, he has been writing articles, tutorials, Python scripts, as well as the blog and the handbook for Glyphs. He lives and works in Vienna, where he runs his type studio Schriftlabor, but he's calling in from Berlin today. It's 1 a.m. and 20 in the morning for him. So I am really, really happy he's staying up to be with us. Thank you.
If I occasionally yawn, it's not because it's boring.
Yeah. So anyway, so now we can we can start, and I will start with my little little introduction. And let me share my screen, and then we can go ahead. And here we are, and play. So basically, I will show you a presentation that I gave 2 weeks after joining Linotype in 2005. This is not all of it, this is only part of it, but I thought it would be nice to give you a little bit of a capsule in time of where we used to be. This was for Typotechnica in London, funny enough, even though I used to live in Germany back then, or I had just moved to Germany. So you can see here with the old Linotype library logo, everything old. So this is back from 2005. And this section about Arabic typography, I was dealing with what is the reason for the complexity of the Arabic script that requires special technical solutions, and then a little bit about the technology of the time. So one of the aspects of complexity in Arabic is that we have marks above or below the characters. These are short vowels that we need, and some of them stack double. We have isolated forms. We have initial, middle, and final because the script is partially connected. Some letters are antisocial. They do not connect to what is after, so they break the string. And so that's why some of them will have two positions, so isolated and final. And the initial would be the isolated because it doesn't connect to what is after. Obviously, for everyone who speaks Arabic, this is, you know this already. And of course, you have different treatments based on the style. You could have ligatures. You could have many other alternates. This is a screenshot from, I think this is Fontographer actually. No, this is still FontLab. No, it's still FontLab. But this is an AXT font, which is when I studied graphic design in the 90s. This is what the fonts looked like. They were hacked through type fonts. They didn't have their own code. They were made for one specific software. If we worked in Quark Express, we could not copy paste the text into Illustrator. Illustrator didn't even support Arabic at the time in any case. There was no InDesign. Photoshop obviously does not support Arabic either at the time. So we had Quark Express Arabic with a dongle, and this is what you worked with. And this is how hacked the font was. So for example, for the final Sad, or the Sad in general, that bit that comes, the cup for the Sin and the Sad, it was separate. And the tooth was also separate, and you somehow combine them later. Obviously, lots of restrictions, particularly for transferring text from one software to another or writing emails or any of that. This was all really, really complicated. The design was poor, but that's a different reason, not just like you could still draw good typefaces with the technology at the time. It's just we had also very poorly designed typefaces. So fast forward to the early 2000s, and this is what I was showing, because at the time in 2005, it was like, oh my God, we have OpenType now for Arabic. Look, all these amazing things that we can do. So this is a screenshot from Volt, which is a tool that Microsoft provides freely for the development of OpenType features for fonts. And basically, you would have the script, and then you would have the languages it supports, and then in every language you would have the features, and then in every feature you would have a lookup. So this is the tree of how you would have. And as you can see here, you have the Arabic script, you have the default, which would be Arabic language, and then all of those, you have the different features, and we're going to see through that. And then with each feature, you have lookups attached to it. This is, we could also, with OpenType, create the combination of the marks. For example, when the shadda comes with a fatha on top, then they can combine instead of clash with one another. This was the CCMP required feature for Arabic. We had all of these contextual forms. So normally, if you guys remember in the 90s, if your system did not support Arabic, when you type, and all the letters, if they show up unconnected. And then you had these substitutions that would say, take the isolated shape, give me the initial version, and the text engine would be able to read the OpenType feature. We actually had to input this one by one. So not so fun. Kerning, not so fun either, which was difficult because, as you can see, like every one on the left column would connect to what is on the right column, and then you have to kern them. So that was also a lot of work. Obviously, you could write scripts for these things to make life easier, but Volt in itself was quite complicated. People still use Volt, by the way. It still functions perfectly fine. But anyways, I'm putting you in context so that you know why developing Arabic fonts was prohibitive still at the time in 2005.
Can I ask you something, Nadine?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
When you did you work with Volt yourself? Yes. And
yes.
Did you work together with others, or did you do it all alone?
No, I did it alone. Mm-hmm. So that was me. Yeah. No, because it's part of the design, because you have to, and you have to learn it anyways. You would have at the time maybe well, in 2005, there weren't many Arabic type designers anyways, like now you have much more. But theoretically speaking, you could have an Arabic type designer, and then you would have a programmer, and the programmer would do the Volt, but then you would have to give them the kerning. And so we did have some teams. Like, for example, when John Hudson works with Fiona and Tim Holloway on, Adobe Arabic or what else, I think they were using Volt. And then, Tim Holloway is obviously the designer, so John would be working on the Volt, and, you would have this collaborative approach. In my case, I did the Volt project myself, and so full editing all of it, because you want control on the project. And in some cases, if you want special substitutions, you need to be able to see it. So, and the seeing of it was quite complicated as well. So the interface was, it's now that we know what we know now, looking back, but even back then it was always you could show off like, oh yeah, I could script and Vault. There was always like something like not the usual. One of the things that we could do also is that, and you could see me here saying it, like, oh my God, the advantages, we can position the position of the mark based on the height of the letter, because before it was floating randomly without a relationship with the base letter. Now it could, be dependent on the metrics that we had. And so you could move it and you can specify it. This was the worst bit for me, because the other ones you could copy paste the tables if you always have the same character set, but the mark positioning, you had to do it manually. So this was the bit that always took the most time, this one and the kerning. And we could also support complex shapes with a mark positioning and no clashes, etc., etc. You could also build all sorts of ligatures if you wanted. Again, you could copy paste the tables from previous projects, because you can export the feature or the lookup, and then drop it in if you have the same naming scheme. Obviously, the naming schemes, they are open, because this is not based, you could define a project and link it to Unicode numbers, but you could decide whatever names you wanted to have. And it all depended on the order of the glyphs in the font. So if you change the order of the glyphs, the entire project gets messed up. So things were clunky. Anyways, required ligatures, etc., stylistic alternates. This was basically the reality we lived in. And I'm doing this like very going back in time. It was funny to go back. I miss the linotype days sometimes. But yeah, sometimes. So it's nice to just go back to see how difficult it was for us to appreciate just what we have achieved in this time. And I was just chatting with Erich yesterday, and I was saying that, we might not have everything we want today for Arabic font technology, but we need to look at the long view and to see how much we have advanced and how much is possible today, and how easy it is to design Arabic typefaces, even if you don't want to script and you don't know how to do any of these complicated things. So with that, I turn over to Eric, and please go ahead. I will stop sharing.
Yes.
And stop sharing. Okay. Yeah.
And
so you can share your screen.
I'll desktop. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. I have so fast forward another decade, and so we have here in my favorite font editor, I have a typeface designed by a promising young upstart, and you see here. But now this is. So far, this is not something special that you see here. It's like you will have the grid of letters that we have, or grid of glyphs actually, and but something that we worked pretty hard on and is first of all the naming of the glyphs. We took into account. That the glyph names have to be human readable. So if I'm talking about Aleph Mada, for instance, I don't want to talk to you about Uni 0662, and you have to remember Unicodes. Actually, some veterans know like half of the Unicodes from the top of their head, but I wouldn't be able to reproduce Unicode in Latin, and why should anybody do this for Arabic? So. And you can double click a glyph, and then we are in text mode, and we can add any other letter that we want to work on. Wonderful, right? Because technically this is a text editor, and this is also something that was not that clear. You had to go into preview modes or into depending on the kind of software you used, or actually work on it, make all the things, and then export it once and or bring it into Vault and see how the shapes would click up. But here you can add them next to each other straight away. And one thing is, since it's a text editor, you might say, why can't I just simply type? And actually, you can. We could, for instance, set here at the bottom the type direction to right to left. And then I switch to Arabic here, for instance, an Arabic keyboard, and I'll just try and type anything. Probably, I hope I'm not writing anything nasty, but
no, that's fine.
I hope it just means nothing. It just means something. Okay. And the cool thing is, because you have glyph names that indicate, for instance, that there are final shapes here. So here we have a Tema Buddha with in its final or terminal shape, and here we have a medial be. While you type, the correct versions of the letters or the correct forms of the letters are inserted right away. And so you can see immediately how the shapes will click and or if everything lines up properly and the way it's supposed to be. And yes, as you have right to left text setting. If I switch back to left to right, then I have the letters in separation again, and that may be easier for editing, because if you then switch to the different glyphs, then you don't trigger other text substitutions or
absolutely.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
It tells me sometimes that my internet connection is unstable.
No, we hear you perfectly. I actually wanted to jump in and say when I switched to glyphs, it was you guys came over to Bad Homburg to give us a workshop, and I'm never an early adopter, so I was quite late adopting. And I remember Georg always used to ask me, like, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? And I was like, yes, but I don't have time to learn a new tool, etc., etc. But I was, and I didn't. But I was in the middle of designing Zafino Arabic. And I needed to be able to design and to see how different letters are connecting together in a word. And I needed to be able to see it. But when I was designing in FontLab, I didn't have the time to go and produce a Volt project to make the substitution, to see what it looks like so that I can go back and edit. And so when we are designing something which is very static, you could perhaps get away with a more complex workaround for the solution. But when you are able to design the letter in the context of a word, especially for a script like Arabic, which is partially connected, this is absolutely important, because you see how the characters are interacting together, you see how they make words, and then when you build the features, you see the substitutions live in front of you. You don't have to get out of your design space. So basically, the technology is being taken care of behind the scenes. And for me, this was a revelation, because you didn't even have to think about production and development while you're still designing, because normally you would have had to figure out all of your substitutions, or at least half of them, go make the project, go back, edit the design, and then update, and then go back and then update. And then it was too complicated. And then I switched immediately to this, and without it I wouldn't have done Zafino Arabic, and then I never looked back, basically. And thank you.
I remember the endless Excel sheets you had for Zafino Arabic, where you tried every possible connection, and I thought, oh, what if she misses one in there? I don't know.
And then it breaks.
The one thing that this font does not use is what you used for Zafino Arabic is cursive attachment, because here
because this is quite flat.
This shape usually always comes back to the same height, but some fonts they cascade, like Zafino Arabic, and you can do this easily with something called anchors. Now, we did not invent anchors, but I think Glyphs was one of the first softwares that actually used them very consequently and very, very strictly for mark attachment. So I can that's one thing. I can see where my marks are going to be by placing the anchors. Or I can have exit and entry anchors for let's see. Maybe I can mess up your font.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest I have something that I can share as well. Yeah, I have an example if you want.
All right, then you share your screen.
Shall I share my screen? Yeah. Okay. Let me share my screen.
Do I need to stop somewhere?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Continue, okay. And I will share. And basically, what you see here. So this is from my PhD typeface. This is Effendem, and this is the scene. And I have a special scene that comes in front of the gym. And well, I've actually put it now in front of another meme. There should have been a gym, but anyways, basically, you would see where they would jump on top of one another, and you would have it like this. Yeah. So this is a special, anyways. Okay, I stop sharing.
Yes.
But yeah, you can mess up the Kappa font, it's fine.
Well, actually, now that illustrates it perfectly. I would like to show some ironic thing. Maybe I guess everyone here on the panel is aware of the discussion about the term non-Latin. That can we use this term because it implies, that Latin is kind of the standard and everything that's not Latin and so on. And there's people who are like apologetic about it and say, well, it's like all the technology that we use was originally made for Latin at first, and then later it adapted. So it's like a historic term. It's and we're at a point now that where we have added technologies to type design, especially for Arabic, that we can bring back some of the technology that was developed for Arabic back into other scripts and back into non-Arabic scripts. I don't know, maybe in a few years we will discuss non-Arabic. I give you one. I give you one example, and you showed the. Here is an OE in a font that's modular enough that allows to reuse the actual E for the OE. And what we do here is we use something called automatic alignment. One problem with the OE in Latin is that usually you would decompose these shapes, right? And then you would adjust your E or whatever, and then you're done. And then later you would sorry, I still have my Arabic keyboard here. You would maybe change the original E to something else, and then your OE is out of sync. This is something that would happen easily. But so that's why you would want to use something called components, right? And in order to get this right, you would need one part that clicks exactly onto the next. And the way to do it is with cursive attachment, a technology that was developed for Arabic. And so here we can have here would be the exit anchor of one, prefixed with a hashtag. So because we don't really want to export a cursive attachment feature. So if you don't call them exit and entry, but hashtag exit and hashtag entry, then the creation of the OpenType feature is suppressed. And in the E, the receiving letter, it has an entry anchor. So this is how an Arabic technology is used for non-Arabic scripts in this case. So there's
we do have it in Kaffa actually. But not in the tools, but like if you go, for example, with if you go back up, example for the lamp, like if you open or the scene, for example, if you open the the scene would be not this one. No, this is the one that I was telling you. This is not best practice. No, but if you look at the SOD, for example, probably so the SOD right under it, No, still not. No. Yeah, there it is. If you go back up, see, and there is the anchor on the baseline. Hashtag entry. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, to lock in the entry to the base shape. And I was embarrassed to tell because I wanted to show to give the font file to Erich to show you guys, but I noticed that I'm not using this anchor attachment to the tooth, and I was embarrassed, and I was telling him like this is not good practice. But basically, we lock them in so that when we change the proportion of the base letter, the incoming connection stays the same relationship because the anchor locks it in place. And this is again groundbreaking breaking because you don't have to go back and edit every time and update and copy paste things.
I see a few things that where we could use something called automatic alignment, because I'm a little worried right now. Some of these things are freely placed, and what if they get out of sync? You know?
I know. I told you, it's not good practice.
And so what I would first probably do is get the shapes into the right order. And so this one would be first, right? And this one second, this one third, and we fix this. And, oh, I didn't fix it. Did I? No, they aren't. I see.
Yeah, because some of them have anchors and some of them not. So it will mess things up because the middle one has, so the noon has an anchor. So for this to work, if one of them has anchors, incoming anchors, entry and exit, all of them should have it. Otherwise it messes them up.
Yeah.
That's like I was saying, it's not good practice.
Okay. Now, what I did, not all of the components were had automatic alignment on. So what I did now is turn on automatic alignment, and all we would need to do here now is to have all the parts with the right, with the correct spacing, and then they would interlock exactly, or actually they do, And I may not have made a very precise job now, but you get the idea, right?
And the most amazing thing with this is that you don't, like, you draw it once, and when you make an update, you update one glyph, not 20. That's really that's why, like, I keep telling everyone that glyphs cut my design time at least in half, at least. So this designing a large character set like Arabic really much easier and simpler.
So you can see here the tools that is being reused a lot now. And the other cool thing that that we were really happy because of the naming scheme that we employ. We call them the nice glyph names. We can deduct the open type features. So, for instance, required ligatures. So, if you have, for instance, all the lam aleph combinations are automatically are inserted into the required ligatures feature, right? And or all the positional features are automatically done, right? And so you cannot forget something. So if you add, let's say, the final cuff, then it will automatically go into the open type feature.
And this is done automatically by glyphs. So the moment you say add Arabic glyphs to the font, and then you just need to click the update button and it does it on the fly. So basically this is the Volt project being taken care of, most of it automatically.
Yeah, we even do a lot of CCNP, what was it, Shadda Kasra? The happens automatic as well, and that's possible if that's built into it. If you use the glyph naming scheme that we propose, we believe that that the way we write the glyph names is human readable. You can read here Hamza above and a Sukun at, and you know what it's about, and you don't have to look it up. Of course, all of this would not have been possible without the input from Arabic designers like you. And a lot of people who helped us tremendously with finding, for instance, the proper names, right? Because I don't speak Arabic and Gerrit doesn't speak Arabic, but we kind of understand it. But and I actually learned a little bit to read Arabic, but I read like a 3-year-old, like I say, but and then maybe it makes sense to. No, but I wouldn't have been able to. I don't have the knowledge of course. So we need input from our users, and this is why I usually say that glyphs is not only a small company producing a type design software. Glyphs is also a community project where a lot of people from all over the world chime in. One thing, though, that I've mentioned the discussion about the term non-Latin and the way how Latin-centric type design software has always been, and this is actually also still true for glyphs too. So if you make a new font in glyphs with Command M, what you get by default, you get the Latin A to Z, and then when you add an Arabic to it, let's say all the basic letters here, then you go in, you get you open it. What you get here is Latin vertical metrics. I have an X height here that's way too high. It doesn't make sense for Arabic. I have a descender that's way too short for Arabic, and so on. Now, wouldn't it be great to when you start your design to have Arabic metrics right away, for instance, or metrics that match your things, or not having to the first step you do is delete the Latin something. And for those who've been holding out for that long, I can give you a very exclusive sneak preview into this application here. You see, it looks very similar to Glyphs too, this is what it looks like.
Is this the first time you're showing this in public?
The first time I'm actually live demoing it, and
okay.
Please forgive me if it crashes because
it's just
okay.
the
very latest build. I don't know with the latest changes. It could crash at any time. We plan to have a public beta hopefully at the end of next week, but we'll see. So when you start a new project in Glyphs 3, the new version of the app, what you get is this, or actually, wait a minute, it's not. What you get is the start window, and you can choose your the script you want to work on. Could choose Latin, for instance, or not, right? But in this case, we want to have Arabic and only Arabic, of course. And so we go.
And then you could decide the languages on the side, for example, the shortcuts, yes, if you want Arabic or Persian or Urdu, and if you want ligatures.
Exactly, right. Or I can add them later as well. This is just to populate my glyphs file. And then I say create project.
I need to go get popcorn and sit like eat popcorn.
Yes, and many of the things are they're still there. We still have the glyph naming scheme, the human readable glyph names. The font view did not change that much. There's a couple of things that are slightly different and a little more a little better cleaned up and stuff. And also. The coolest thing now is in font info. This is our font info. This is where glyphs changed a lot. If you go into master, you see here we have vertical metrics specific for Arabic. So we have an LF height only for Arabic. We have the height of the joining line only for Arabic, and we can now actually get rid of the default descender. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. I can get rid of the default descender, for instance, because we only want the mean depth. And other than that, I think it's pretty nice. And the cool thing is, I'm in my Arabic glyphs, of course now all empty and stuff. But I get the I get to do my dotless, for instance, with the metrics that I want. I'm sorry. So you can have a little fun at someone who does not know what he's doing, trying to make an Arabic font. And you also can see here for something that's different now is that the preview of the outline. You get it right away, and not only at export time, so you can very quickly see what the resulting outline is going to be.
Yeah, and then it makes it look much cleaner.
Yeah. Also, also if it can also tell you if the if you immediately see if a contour has the wrong orientation, for instance, right? That way. So here is my dotless B, right? For instance, and so and then I would in the B. Wait a minute, it's already there. In the proper B, I can use this one as my basis, and then of course I would have to add an anchor called top here, and then I can add a dot above.
No,
Arabic.
dot below for B.
Dot below. Thank you.
Below.
Dot above would be something different, right? So
yes.
It's the T, right? And then here. And here I'll do so. Okay, I'm sorry. Probably it's totally ridiculous, the design I do. Now, one thing about these things, you also see the anchors now. They are shown in a different way now. I see. It has to be like this, of course.
Yes.
The connecting anchor now is outlined, and the base anchor for the next for the next mark is full, and so I also have to add bottom anchor.
But if you do Command U, don't they come now automatically?
They should. I think it's currently.
Yeah, and you got the ring.
Okay, the ring wherever this one has to go. I don't know. And now we can still
make
component glyph, of course, and then it automatically aligns as well. And you see this also in the tint of the components. If a component is not automatically aligned, it will show in gray. And if it's automatically aligned, it will show in green now. So you can very quickly see if everything's automatically aligned. So for instance, in that scene that we had before, if there's one part that's not aligned, right? So, okay. Now I have to apologize. After all the beautiful Arabic we've seen, we end with the most ugly possible Arabic. Yeah, but you get the idea. The big move in Glyphs 3 will be to go away from Latin centrism as much as possible, and to be able to design as natively Arabic as possible. And so that was a quick sneak peek into Glyphs 3.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I actually forgot to. Well, one, it looks amazing. Thank you. Particularly the aligned and not aligned. This is quite good because like it makes life much easier. You can immediately spot what is in place and what you forgot or messed up by mistake. No, this is really good. And I should have mentioned this before and I didn't. But one of the, like, other than the fact that glyphs reduced my design time by forever, and I can now do many other things in life because I don't have to do everything. Like for the same amount of design, I need to spend less time. So thank you for that. But one of the things that I really respect a lot about the whole Glyphs team is their dedication and openness to all of the world scripts, if you want to call it that way, from the get-go. This is not a software that made its mark and found its market share in the Western world and then eventually decided to expand into non-Latin support. It was from the beginning, on the get-go, with the understanding that, you know, it's going to support all of these different script systems. And even at the time when there were very few designers working with Arabic. I mean, there's not a lot of us, so it's not like you guys are getting rich from the amount of Arabic type designers, you know. But this shows, no, yeah, because some people are driven by market share and income, and some people are driven by a worldview that is supportive of everything. And I think it's very important that we give tribute to that, because, and I had said this in the previous panel, Bahia was talking about abortions, in like 3 abortions that happened in the Arabic development of technology, where things were really falling apart. And I countered with like, yes, those happened, but there were some other occasions where things really picked up, like the establishment, the 3 other non-abortions, the opposite. For me, this is one, the establishment of the Unicode standard, whereby every letter had its unique code so that we could email each other in Arabic. The second was the OpenType font format, which allowed for complexity as we need in Arabic and many other scripts. And then the third one was glyphs, that really removed the barrier to Arabic type design. So people who want to design Arabic fonts don't have to be geniuses who can work with Volt, you know, because Volt required, you know, a lot. And this one made you just, it gave you the freedom to focus on the design. And that for me is a like major contribution to Arabic font technology and Arabic type design, both. And I think that the one of the reasons why we see so much Arabic type design today by Arabs and non-Arabs is the fact that glyphs made it so much easier to get into this. So for that, I thank you on behalf of myself, and I hope many other people as well. So, and I always say this, like any occasion for me to say how amazing this contribution has been, I never shy away from saying that, because we really have to give credit where credit is due. So anyway, so thank you. And yeah,
I see there's lots of messages in the chat. And
yeah, oh my God, there's lots of people having fun, and also a lot of my students and people still awake. Thank you. Let me, if you could stop sharing, and then let's bring the other panelists on video still. We still have quite a lot of people still watching us. Let's bring the so Mamoun and Stephen, if you'd like to come back with us. So thank you all for the contributions today. We definitely went over time, but people can listen in later for the recordings as well. And there was someone who's like 5 a.m. their time still watching. This is, thank you again, this is unbelievable. So I think it's time to open up questions for people. Because we don't have a lot of time, let's see if people would like to, they could do 2 things. They could, so this is now, I'm speaking to the audience. 1, thank you for sticking with us. And I hope you've enjoyed this. 2, you can submit questions to the panelists in 2 ways. You could either type your question in the chat, and so let's now keep the chat for the questions so that we can pick them up. And if otherwise, you could also raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can actually pose your question and speak. You can, yeah, so that is also possible. And so I will do that as well. So if to raise your hand, when you go and click on manage participants or participants, I think there you can, there's an option to say raise hand. So you can play around with that. If you haven't, if you don't know how to do that, just type your question. I know there's Peter Ruzenik is trying to ask us something, the 2 questions, and he hasn't typed all of it yet, so we're gonna wait for him. In the meantime, I think I'll take maybe 3 or 4 questions. I don't know, let's see how many people would like to ask. But do you guys have questions for one another while we wait, or shall I start with my own question? Yeah, no? Yeah, Mamoun, yes, yeah.
You can start.
Okay, good. So, yeah, let's see. Yeah, we'll start with you, Mamoun, I guess. Over the, you know, like we've seen the bulk of work that you have contributed, and during your long career, whether in the, you know, the study of the, because you haven't mentioned as well, you have a PhD in Square Kufi. as well, on top of everything else that you've showed us. So in your work, whether it is researching Arabic calligraphy or practicing Arabic calligraphy or practicing type design, and you work with also your daughter Aida, who is like amazing in font technology for Arabic in particular, and your ability to, work together to produce high quality fonts for people like Microsoft and what else. What was the biggest challenge for you in all of these things? Did you feel, because you've managed to like conquer so many different fronts, was there one particular instant where you felt like this is something that I struggle with? Was it a technical thing? Was it a design aspect? Like, was it a cultural thing? Like, where did you find your biggest challenge in all of that?
I actually found challenges in all these fields.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if I faced all of them well, but I always felt that I needed to learn something new whenever a new problem is thrown at me. I felt confident enough to say, yes, I can try to solve, or I can try to do, or I can try to produce. And in most cases, I learned what I learned while producing things that were requested of me. So unfortunately, I didn't have a formal type design education. I just learned by myself. I didn't have Arabic calligraphy formal education. I just had to learn by myself. So I'm used to learning while doing, and I find that learning from others is the greatest joy I have, besides actually creating. So I think the lesson that I learned is to try to encourage others to do what they love, even if they don't know it at the start, because nobody knows everything at the start.
Exactly.
You only learn as you work, and if you love something, I think you will have a way to find your way around it and become good at it.
Yeah, I have a question. So I have two questions coming up, and I think the first one definitely goes to you. Is the Kufi category inherently, and this is from Hand, is the Kufi category inherently more harmonious with Latin than the quote unquote cursive category?
Yes, I do believe in general that is correct, but that is not a limitation on trying to use cursive, more cursive styles, because they do have their places and functions and requirements as well. I think we are at a stage now where we are passing from visual compatibility, which is a simple comparison of shapes, into meaning compatibility, which is the compatibility of what the shapes convey to a person of that culture. In other words, the shapes on their own do not convey the same message if they are used in Latin or if they are used in Arabic. So I think we have now enough experience and heritage in this area to go into the next stage where we look at what kind of function or impact or meaning a certain typeface in Latin gives, and then looking for alternate shapes that would give the same impact, the same effect. And I think that is going to still provide a lot of new contributions that we didn't have a way to do in the past, because the experience is now accumulating enough to pass into the next level of independent designs that can work together in two cultures.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much. Like, I absolutely agree. And I think what I really like about your answer is that you also take the long view on the development of Arabic type design, that we are not stuck in one moment in time and what we design is the only and final solution for whatever we are doing, that what we are doing is a series of experimentations and explorations until we find what we are looking for. And yes, we evolve in time and the solutions will evolve in time. So absolutely, thank you so much. And yeah, it's just absolutely what you say. And I find that remarkable as well, because you've, like, one of example that you didn't show in the presentation, but Calligraphy Arabic, I mean, obviously is an excellent example of a more cursive style. So it's a naskh, a contemporary naskh design that works really well for documents, is sitting next to a sans serif in Latin, and they work very nicely together. And the flow of the Arabic is exactly what you would want for text that you are reading in Microsoft Office. And I think this is the kind of answer that, you know, that illustrates what you're saying, that, you know, you bring the functionality of the typeface and what it conveys as well. So personality, function, and then put it together with the Latin. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yes.
We have another question. I think this one will go to, probably first goes to Erich, and this is from Peter. And it says, how is the proper way to design a cascading typeface in glyphs with proper connections according to authentic Arabic script grammar, for example, Nastaliq?
All right. Now
I think this would be the cursive attachment, right?
Yes, that would be cursive attachment. I've tried. Wait a minute. I hope I can show this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. So I kind of made up a very, again, sorry, like I destroyed the beauty of the moment that we had so much beautiful calligraphy, beautiful type, and now it's really gone. But this is just about the technology. What you have to have in an initial shape is an exit anchor. What you have to have in a medial shape is an entry and an exit anchor, and then from the coordinates of these anchors, glyphs can produce the cursive attachment open type feature. And of course, final shapes only have an entry anchor, and isolated shapes don't have any of these. And if I switch, then wait a minute, I should.
They need to be in the opposite order.
Yes, I switch to right to left, and I'll try and type and then it connects this way. I don't know if this probably doesn't look right, but you get the idea. There's just shapes that click into each other.
Yeah, and basically
about cursive attachment. Yeah.
No, well, no, you continue and then I'll add something.
Okay. The one thing about cursive attachment is that that may have an influence on your design in the way that, well, let me go back to this one, where you, so here, for instance, where they always click on the same line or on the same height. Is there an expression for this? The non-cursive attachment, but we should not say non anymore, right?
Yeah.
But where you can,
baseline attachment.
Baseline attachment. Okay, if you have baseline attachment like this, then you always have to make sure that this shape is the same and this has the same left and right side bearings and so on. And you have things in a medial shape like this, you have a thing sticking out on the right side and one on the left side. And in a cursive, in a design, oh, sorry, my shortcuts are not working. So in a cursive, no, this is, sorry, so it's getting worse. Where is it? Yeah, here. And in a cursive design, you may not need to do that. So again, don't take this as a design suggestion, so just a technical suggestion, is that you don't have to have the incoming stroke in your medial shape, because that is supplied from the initial or other medial shapes.
On this, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In this type of design, the most important challenge is changing these different shapes when they alternate, so that you don't repeat the same. So how do you usually program this into the font?
So we would have a duplicate of this medial fake bear here. so I have here. So we have here an alternate, right? So we can call this one the medial bear, I don't know, large, for instance. Then I take these two nodes here and make them a little higher, for instance. And then, of course, if I still go this way, I mean, I would still have to insert it manually here in order to see it, right? But of course, here I could add a contextual alternate feature. That now in a very simple shape, now I would say there are meaty, these, so we have a medial bear and another medial bear following each other, and then let's say the second bear will be replaced by the large medial bear, and that would be about it. I can just say compile, and then if I activate contextual alternates, you see every other bear. Let's see. Every other bear has a different height, right?
Okay, so
of course,
you can manually program the OpenType features as you need to. It's not only automatically done by
of course, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
just
this type
the
of
ones
substitution, you'd have to give it yourself, because this is a behavior which is not typical. So the designer has to decide what the behavior is.
Exactly, yeah. This is by design. And the other one, what Glyphs automates are the obvious things. So if you have isolated fare and a medial fare, of course, it can build the medial feature from it. So that's obvious. And if you have like an one shape and one shape with a dot SS01 at the end of it, then it knows how to build the stylistic set one feature automatically. Okay, cool. So I'll stop sharing my screen again, I guess. Yes, okay.
Cool.
Other questions?
So, yes, we have, I'm going to read it super fast because it's a long question. So basically, this is from Kevin. He apologizes for the long question. So I'm a book designer at Stanford University Press, where we're actively acquiring many Middle East studies and Jewish studies titles. I therefore work with a great deal of transliterated Arabic and Hebrew, where our editors are pushing for more accurate and extensive diacritics. This has pushed our production department's type library to its limits, as we're simultaneously required to maintain series standards that often use typefaces that haven't been updated with the necessary Unicode diacritics, which is a constant frustration for me while typesetting. Would you recommend that we scrap all type designs that have not been updated with these diacritics and adopt type that has more complete character sets? Or are there efforts I can make as an aspiring type designer to update these typefaces myself to include the diacritics I need? Under dot characters, real ayns and hamzas, macrons, etc. And sorry for the long description, no worries at all. This is actually, it's not an Arabic type design question. This is a Latin support for diacritics required for the transliteration of Arabic and Hebrew and other, other languages. So I don't know if anyone would like to offer an answer, or shall I do it? Or maybe Stephen might want to, or anyway.
From the type design perspective,
so basically,
it's not that difficult. It's more like
you just need the character sets.
Yeah, and it's also a legal question if you're allowed to.
Yeah, someone already answered. Yeah, I mean, there are two ways. You can ask the Foundry if they give you permission to edit the font, because most fonts are not allowed to be edited. This is by, the user end user license agreement, so the EULA. And so you would need to ask permission to do that. Or you could commission the font foundry whose typefaces you are using to extend the character set if they have not done it yet. This might be expensive, depends on your budget, and depends how many fonts you are using and how many weights, etc., etc. Or the third option would be to switch to a different typeface. So that would be, those are the three avenues. And there is a question of cost. Which one is more expensive? Is it to redesign, like, when you switch to a new font, you might need to redesign all of your documents because of the text flow. So there is work there that also costs money. type design also, if you want to invest time, that also takes time. So those are open, but the actual time needed for those characters is very small, because it's just basically a dot above a D or below an H, or, you know, so these are quite standard. And like in glyphs, this takes like less than a second. It's
also an update on this. We have been researching. There's different romanization standards for Arabic. There's not only one. There's like at least 4 or 5 different ones, I believe, and I believe there's many more, I guess. And so we've been trying to take input for romanization standards. That is an issue for Arabic, but it's also an even bigger issue for things like Sanskrit. Where you get an immense amount of letters with DRSs below and these kinds of things. So it's like really fun. Yeah. But if you want to look into it, and so building the composite glyphs is really very easy. That's true. So you might get a foundry to do it, and they might be to update their fonts for that. The other thing you can do is there are open source projects on GitHub. There's glyphs files that are available on GitHub where you can contribute these things. So and they open right away in glyphs, and then all you need to do is add the missing diacritics and then compose the composites that you need.
Yeah. So I have a question. Since most of these characters are combining diaresis or a dot or whatever above or below existing Latin characters, is there a way theoretically that this behavior would become like the marks in Arabic? So that you just type letter D and then you have a key for example, diaresis below, and then it's basically a joining mark rather than.
Yes. Theoretically, that already works, or not theoretically, it actually works.
But you need the key. Yeah.
You need a key or a keyboard, and you can either make your own, as I did. When you saw, I switched between Arabic keyboard and another keyboard up there. It was the keyboard that I made for myself. It's the Austrian extended one. It allows me to type combining marks, right?
Yeah.
And
so
there's very few keyboards that support that. That's true.
Good. And Aida is saying that she did a lot of this work for Microsoft fonts, and it can be done with open type processing. So they should be working. But the question is, would they work in a font, in like a standard Latin 1 font that
most fonts support it already, or most fonts produced with glyphs at least, because we export the mark and mark to mark, the mark attachment and mark to mark attachment features right out of the box. If you place your top and bottom anchors, you get the mark to base and the mark to mark.
Okay.
So the fonts support it. The difficult thing is the typing, right? So,
yeah, obviously. Yeah, good. So I hope this answers Kevin's question. Yes. One last question. Is there, no, this is from Peter now. Is there a preferred rule to design the combination of shadda with kasra together above the character, or separated, the shadda above or the kasra below? He's seen 2 examples. And he would like to have an answer. I would also like to have an answer. Mamoun, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this. I usually put both of them above, but I've also seen them separated.
Yes. The shadda and kasra make up a rather peculiar situation, because the kasra should go below the letter.
Yeah.
But when it's combined with the shadda, it follows the shadda above the letter.
Yeah.
So about 100 years ago, there was a convention that's agreed upon that it's okay to raise the kasra with the shadda above the letter. However, in Quranic orthography, as well as sometimes in Urdu or some other languages, users want to have the kasra below and the shadda above. They don't like what is conventional for Arab users.
Okay.
So for me, this is quite normal to have them above, but for other users, it's not. The question is, can we have both? usually the system itself will produce one the way based on how the font is programmed to start with. So the designer will say, I want these to be together above, or I want them separate. However, I think one could introduce a stylistic alternate to that would be applied by the user to convert from one to the other. There are a few Arabic fonts that do that, and we are exploring having this as a standard addition to Microsoft fonts that are commonly used, because we keep getting this request, especially, as I said, for writing Urdu and some other languages.
Okay.
So for now, we have some Microsoft fonts using one system, while some are using the other, while we are still struggling with how to make them more consistent and have both accommodated.
Okay, but would you say this is a linguistic issue? So could this would this stylistic set, because if you have it for Microsoft, it's not like the stylistic sets are easily accessible. You would want to put it, for example, in a language tag. Like, for example, would you say for all Urdu users, we need to split them? Or would you?
Yes, I think that's.
Okay.
But again, we cannot cover all the users. We get consistent requests from Urdu users. We know this is what is preferred there, but we may have other language communities that may prefer one way or the other. So in my view, we have to give the user the ability to choose one or the other eventually.
Okay. And this would be, Eric, this would be the composition decomposition, right? Because what you would need to do is to reverse it. Like if you're building the font in glyphs, the composition decomposition already places the shadda and the kasra together. So would you need another lookup to basically break that combination, to let them stack in order? Okay.
The interesting, you would have to, from a technical point of view, but I don't know how many people can follow me now. It's like you'd have to put in a very early lookup that is called then called, for instance, from cult or something else, and that would prevent maybe the ligature of shadda and kasra, and then so they could be separate, and that would be a user choice. That's thinkable. Yeah.
Okay.
That will also require a local language.
Like Urdu.
You can put in those local languages, and that is not supported widely or consistently among many applications yet. So we have some time to get that standard as well.
Yeah, it is still the problem. There's a lot of possibilities that are in the technology, but the support is so bad, or the software that people use is so buggy that very often type designers and font engineers need to find workarounds for bugs in other software and hacks to make the fonts work in that software or in that software. Otherwise, the client complains, right? And this is one of the big problems that we have when we work.
Let me just make a general comment. This is a situation where there are conventions in certain language communities that are accepted, but not accepted in other communities. So I think whenever a font is designed, if you already know who's going to use it, they may give you feedback and you can design it to match what they want. But in the case where the font is open to everyone to use, I think we are going to have some unfulfilled needs, because there are always special ways to want something in a certain way that's not common or a tradition in another part of the user community.
Yeah, especially when it gets to a point where you would have to change a things in order to accommodate specialties for one language, you might better have a separate font for that. So that's, but that's more like a decision that has to be taken more early on. Otherwise, you waste a lot of time. But I'm speaking from the perspective of the designer, of course, right?
Yeah, and I have to say, like, one of the things that we miss dramatically is the this world knowledge or globalized knowledge of Arabic in itself. So like I can make a confession here and now. My knowledge is restricted to Arabic language and Arabic use, but when it comes to Persian, Urdu, any of the other languages that use Arabic, my understanding is very limited. And like the kinds of projects that I take, I am always aware that my knowledge doesn't extend to all of them. And there are very, like, I would count them on one hand, the people in the whole world who would actually have enough knowledge about the different uses of the languages using the Arabic script. Mamoun would be obviously one of them. John Hudson would be another, you know, Kamal Mansour would be another. So we have so few people who actually know about the behavior of Arabic across all of these different languages. And I think, like Mamoun said before, when we were saying, like, now we can move on to the next phase, I think also as Arabic type design and typography expands, this is Arabic not just for the Arabic language, it's also for the entirety of the languages using the Arabic script. I think we need to grow the knowledge base, whether it is for Arabic or otherwise, and document it, share it. We need Mamoun to write books. We need, you know, we need all of this information to become more widely accessible, so that, you know, not all of us have Mamoun's email, you know. So, you know, we need. I think we need to now move to a different, more, not different, I would say, move on or expand in the scholarly aspect of the knowledge related to Arabic type, technology, heritage, design, all of these different aspects. I don't know if anyone else would like to ask a question. Otherwise, and no one has been volunteering so far, but I think it would be nice to just wrap up everything that we've been doing here in these three panels, and especially with today. And I think, yeah, the scholarly aspect of the contribution of everyone on today's panel and the previous panelists cannot be discounted, whether through the enabling of, you know, technology that allows us to design without headaches, or it's the archives themselves who allow us the richness to be able to appreciate the heritage that we have. And we saw, you know, we saw in the example of the Bodoni, no, it wasn't the Bodoni, I forgot which one. Anyways, the one, the typeset Arabic that looked a little bit funny, that
it was Bodoni, right?
It was Bodoni, you know? Yeah, I think so.
Tell us what it is, and they will tell you what is it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see how my memory is poor, but it's also 1:30 a.m. my time. So so when the type designer is separated from the visual material that enriches their understanding of the script, the design suffers. There is no other way to put this. This is the reality. When we don't know what the letterforms are supposed to look like, whether you want to follow calligraphic references or not, that's not the issue, but the basic structure, aesthetics, the system is there. And if we are separated from it, then there is something which is a little bit still off, no matter what we do. So whether, again, the technology or the, you know, the presence of the archives making things accessible for us, whether it is the type design contributions and the research, all of these things are really enriching the whole industry and the study of Arabic type design and typography. We've seen also in the previous panels, you know, again, other type designers working, other graphic designers working with the Arabic script, other people who are studying the history of the letterforms. All of these things enrich our knowledge. And when I was starting in type design, long time ago, when the fonts looked as bad as what I showed in the slides, this is there was very few things that I could look at and read, and there was just the calligraphy books. But then when we come to typography and type design in Arabic, there was practically nothing. In the 90s, like really nothing, nothing I could see, particularly in the Middle East as well. And today we live in a very different world. And I think for that we need to be grateful. And this is because of people like you here and the other panelists that we've had. And yeah, as long as we have centers like the Center for Book Arts who can bring us together, and the audience who is still sticking with us, some of them quite also late into the night. I think we can, make a difference and continue together, and let's see where else we can go with all this. So I don't know.
Were the other lectures recorded, the previous seminars?
Yes, they're recorded, and they are available on Facebook, so people can go and see them, and they will be posted, I think, on the website of the Center for Book Arts. I think this one is going to be a clearer recording because we see the slides and you see the camera. So I think we've cracked it though with this session, so it's quite nice. I've also loved all of the chats coming in, and everyone commenting where they're coming from and all of that. That has also been quite a nice communal way to engage with the speakers, and I hope you guys have been following them as well. So thank you so much. I don't know if Corina would like to come join us also.
No.
Yes, hi.
I'm just here watching you guys. Thank you so much, everyone. I mean, Mamoun, Stephen, Eric, Nadine. It's been such an unbelievable journey. And I think, just being able to be present for all three of these sessions, I personally have learned so much. And I know that our audience has really learned so much. And just from, as you were saying, the comments that I've been watching and the questions that are happening, it just shows that this is a topic that people want to talk about. So I'm just so grateful for all of you. The talks will be posted on our website soon, but as Nadine said, they're on Facebook now, and we hope that many more people watch them for years to come. So thank you all, and thank you all who stayed with us for this amazing 3 hours.
We went over time.
I think
but everyone is at home in their PJs, I'm sure. So
I would be if I could.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.